mwe mudukurikiye ndabashimiye kandi mbahaye ikaze kuri ikiganiro tugiye gukorana uyu munsi. Tugiye kuganira ku mateka ya perezida wa mbere wa South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela rero ni muntu ki? Nelson Mandela ni umugabo avukira mu karere bita Mvezo, mu muryango w'abatembo. Izina rye rero nyaryo ni Nelson Mandela. Akaba ko tubwira hano born Rolihlahla Mandela 18 of July 1918, and yitabye Imana ku itariki 5 z'ukwa 12 mu mwaka 2013. He was a South African anti-apartheid activist and a politician who served as the first president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black head of state and first elected in a fully representative democratic election. His government focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid by fostering racial reconciliation, ideologically an African nationalist, a socialist. He served as the president of the African National Congress, ANC, party from 1991 to 1997. So murumva rero ko yavutse mu mwaka w'1918 yitaba Imana ku itariki 5 z'ukwa 12 2013. Yabayeho ari umuntu uharanira uburenganzira bw'abirabura mu gihe cya apartheid. Yabaye mu ba mbere barwanyije ivangura ry'amoko ry'abagashakabuhake. Aho rero afunguriwe yahise atorerwa kuyobora igihugu cya South Africa, noneho akibera perezida wa mbere perezida wa mbere w'umwirabura wari utowe ku bwiganze bw'amajwi, kandi muri guverinoma yari ihagarariwe n'amashyaka yose ya politike yo muri icyo gihugu muri icyo gihe. Akomoka rero nk'umukosa, kuko tuzi ko muri Afurika y'Epfo harimo amoko menshi, harimo tribu zigeze iziri official ni tribu 11, hakaba n'indimi 11 languages, official languages. Hanyuma muri aho ngaho hakaba harimo abo bita abakosa, xhosa. Hanyuma akaba Mandela yaravukiye mu muryango w'ubwami bw'abatembo. Xhosa, Mandela was born into the Tembu royal family in Mvezo, South Africa. He studied law at the University of Fort Hare and the University of Wits before working as a lawyer in Johannesburg. There he became involved in anti-colonial and African national politics, joining the ANC in 1943 and co-founding its youth league in 1944. After the National Party's white-only government established apartheid, a system of racial segregation that privileged whites, Mandela and ANC committed themselves to its overthrow. He was appointed president of ANC and ANC's Transvaal branch, rising to prominence for his involvement in the 1952 Defiance Campaign and the 1955 Congress of the People. He was repeatedly arrested for seditious activities and was unsuccessfully prosecuted in the 1956 treason trial. Urumva rero yavutse mu muryango w'abatembu Mvezo. Yiga amashuri yo muri University ya Fort Hare and yiga muri Wits University. Hanyuma arangije ajya kuba umwavoka, umunyamategeko mu mujyi wa Johannesburg. Noneho yaje kujya mu bikorwa byo kurwanya bagashakabuhake n'ubuhake n'ubukoloni. hanyuma ajya muri ANC yari iriho kuva kera, ni ishyaka ry'abirabura rigiharanira actually kwibohoza kw'abirabura. ANC yayinjiyemo mu mwaka w'igihumbi kimwe magana cyenda mirongo ine na gatatu. Afata no muri bamwe mu bashinze urubyiruko rwa ANC muri mirongo ine na kane. Yinjiyemo mirongo ine na gatatu, hashize umwaka umwe aba mu bashinze urugaga rw'urubyiruko rwa ANC. Mu gihe ishyaka ry'abazungu National Party White Only Government established, igihe apartheid yagiyeho muri hafi za mirongo ine na kane hangaho na mirongo ine na gatanu, muri icyo gihe cya kabiri cy'intambara ya kabiri y'isi yose. Iyo government yari ishyigikiye ivangura ry'amoko, ubwironda kw'abazungu n'iki byose bakanamiza abirabura. Noneho Mandela yiyemeza hamwe n'abandi gukuraho ubwo butegetsi bwa apartheid. Hanyuma ubwo nyuma yaho yaje gutorerwa kuba perezida wa ANC mu gice cya Transvaal, mu ntara ya Transvaal. Transvaal ni imwe mu ntara ziri muri nahagana Transvaal. Ubwo ngubwo nababwira ko Transvaal ni imwe mu ntara nyine izigana hariya za Johannesburg, hariya muri kariya karere hari aho bitaga muri Transvaal. Ni aho ngaho yatorewe kuba perezida wa ANC muri icyo gice cya South Africa, cy'igihugu cya South Africa, aho bitaga nyine muri Transvaal. Hanyuma amaze gutorwa yakomeje kwifatanya n'abandi kurwanya apartheid, ajya muri za manifestation zinyuranye, ndetse afungwa inshuro nyinshi cyane, bamufungura. Noneho ariko mu cyo bise treason trial ntago babashije kumurega n'iki byose, yaraburanishijwe. Hanyuma icyaje kuba n'iki, influenced by Marxism, he secretly joined the banned South African Communist Party, SACP. Yagiye muri SACP. Hanyuma, although initially committed to no violence protest, in association with the SACP, he co-founded the militant Umkhonto weSizwe in 1961 that led a sabotage campaign against the apartheid government. He was arrested and imprisoned in 1962. And following the Rivonia trial, he was sentenced to life imprisonment for conspiring to overthrow the state. So yarafashwe, yagize uruhare mu gushinga uriya mutwe witwaje intwaro witwa Umkhonto weSizwe mu mwaka wa 1961. Ariko mbere yaho gato yagiye mu ishyaka ry'abakomunisti, South African Communist Party, SACP. Hanyuma kubera ko atashakaga ibintu bikoreshejwe violence n'iki, noneho although initially committed to no violence, kubera ko mbere nubwo atakundaga ibintu bimena amaraso, revolution imena amaraso, ariko kubera ko nta bundi buryo ko yabigenje, yafatanyije n'abandi gushinga Umkhonto weSizwe. Tuzi ko Umkhonto weSizwe ari branch, army branch ya ANC. Noneho hari operation yabaye ya sabotage yo iviza guverinoma y'abazungu apartheid. Icyo gihe nibwo bamufashe, arafatwa muri 1962. Igihe u Rwanda rwabonaga ubwigenge, Mandela yarafashwe. Muri iyo mukiswe Rivonia trial nibwo yaciriwe gufungwa ubuzima bwe bwose, ajya muri gereza. Noneho rero ayo ni amateka makeya ya Mandela. Muri makeya reka ze tuyavugaho neza. Mandela served 27 years in prison, split between Robben Island, Posmo prison and Victor Vesta prison, amid growing domestic and international pressure and fears of racial civil war. President F.W. de Klerk released him in 1990. Mandela and de Klerk led effort to negotiate an end to apartheid, which resulted in 1994 multiracial general election in which Mandela led the ANC to victory and became president, leading a broad coalition government which promulgated a new constitution. Mandela emphasized reconciliation between the country's racial group and created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate past human rights abuse. Economically, his administration retained its predecessor's liberal framework despite his own socialist belief, also introducing measures to encourage land reform, combat poverty, and expand healthcare service. Internationally, Mandela acted as mediator in the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing trial and served as Secretary General of the Non-Aligned Movement from 1998 to 1999. He declined a second presidential term and was succeeded by his deputy Thabo. Mandela became an elder statesman and focused on combating poverty and HIV and AIDS through the charitable Nelson Mandela Foundation. Mandela rero yagiye mu bikorwa binyuranye aho amariye gutorwa, nyuma ajya nk'uko tubibona nyine yagiye muri komisiyo yari irimo gukemura guca urubanza rw'iriya ndege muri Panama Flight 103 bombing trial. Hanyuma yabaye Secretary General w'ibihugu bitagira aho bibogamiye umuryango amara mu mwaka umwe. Hanyuma icyamuranze cyane nuko bamupropoje kongera kwitoza bwa kabiri arabyanga, noneho ahubwo atangira kurwana intambara yifatanya n'abandi muri kampeni zo kurwanya sida abinyujije mu muryango we bita Nelson Mandela Foundation. Hanyuma rero Mandela was a controversial figure for much of his life, although critics on the right denounced him as a communist terrorist, and those on the far left deemed him too eager to negotiate and reconcile with Apartheid supporters. He gained international acclaim for his activism, globally regarded as an icon of democracy and social justice. He received more than 250 honors, including the Nobel Peace Prize. He is held in deep respect within South Africa, where he is often referred to by his Tembu clan name Madiba and described as father of the nation. Mandela rero yagaragaye mu bikorwa byinshi, yakoze ibintu bidashyikirwa, ariko noneho reka twinjire mu mateka ye nako. So muri 1962 twabonye ko yafunzwe, afungirwa hamwe byose hamwe yamaze imyaka 27 afunzwe, ariko ntago yigeze afungirwa ahantu hamwe. Mandela yafungiwe muri gereza zinyuranye, 3 izo turimo tubona hano. Robben Island ni gereza imwe ni naho yanafunguwe ava, ubundi aba muri Pozimo na n'indi prison iri hirya muri Cape Town ariko ahagana za Tokai. Hanyuma Victor Vesta prison na n'indi prison iri ahandi mu kandi gace. Hanyuma rero aho yarangirije igihano, aho afungurwa, turabona yuko yafunguwe ari ava muri Robben Island, afunguwe na Perezida F.W. de Klerk, niwe wamufunguye. Icyo gihe niwe wari perezida wari uyoboye South Africa muri iyo myaka ya za 90, igihe icyo gihe u Rwanda rwari mu ntambara. Hanyuma Mandela afungurwa, hanyuma 1994 nibwo yatowe aba perezida wa South Africa. Tuzi ko mu mateka turebye neza hari undi mufungwa wa politike wari ufunzwe witwa Ahmad Katrada w'umuhinde. Gusa ni abantu batari ku rwego rumwe. Icyo nshaka kuvuga nuko nyine Mandela ari we wagize kubera nyine uruhare rwe yagize mu byerekeranye no kurwanya apartheid cyane. Hari n'abandi barwanyije n'iki twabona nk'umuntu witwa Robert Sobukwe ni umuntu wagaragaye cyane nawe mu byerekeranye n'iyi mpunduro yo kurwanya apartheid bagerageza gukuraho ubutegetsi bw'abazungu bwari bufite ivangura ry'uruhu bafasha abirabura nabi. Robert Sobukwe nawe yagize uruhare. Reka nze mbavugi tuganire cyane ku byerekeranye na Robert Sobukwe. Igituma nshaka kuvuga kuri Robert Sobukwe cyane nuko Robert Sobukwe ubwo gereza ya Robben Island yafungurwaga, Robert Sobukwe ari n'umwe mu bafungwa ba mbere bafungiwe Robben Island. Bishatse kuvuga iki rero? Bishatse kuvuga yuko prison mbere yuko yubakwa Robben Island yari hari amazu makeya, noneho abazungu bacirayo uyu mugabo witwa Robert Sobukwe nawe wari umuharanizi w'uburenganzira bw'ikiremwamuntu, bajya kumufungirayo muri izo ruma, noneho ku buryo niwe duwaye wa Robben Island. Ndetse mu bantu bagiye basura Robben Island, iyo ugiye Robben Island inzu prison Mandela yarafungiwemo iri ukwayo, hanyuma n'inzu ya Robert Sobukwe aho Robert Sobukwe yari afungiwe mu kato nayo iri ukwayo. Bivuga yuko rero Mandela yaje ahasanga Robert Sobukwe. Robert Sobukwe rero reka nze mbabwire amateka ye makeya. Robert Sobukwe rero ni muntu ki? Robert Sobukwe Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe yavutse ku itariki 5 z'ukwa 12 1924. Urumva yari muto kuri Mandela. Ko Mandela twibye ko yavutse 1918, Robert Sobukwe avuka mu 1924. Yita Imana ku itariki 27 z'ukwa 2 1928. Was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary, a founding member of the Pan-Africanist Congress PAC, serving as the first president of the organization. So we ntabwo yari muri ANC ahubwo yari muri Pan-African Congress muri PAC. Sobukwe was regarded as a strong proponent of an Africanist future for South Africa and opposed political collaboration with anyone other than African, defining African as anyone who lives in and pays allegiance to Africa and who is prepared to subject themselves to African majority rule. In March 1960, Sobukwe organized and launched a no-violence protest campaign against past laws, for which he was sentenced to 3 years in prison on ground of incitement. In 1963, the enactment of the Sobukwe Clause allowed an indefinite renewal of his prison sentence, and Sobukwe was subsequently relocated to Robben Island. 1963 nibwo Robert Sobukwe yafungiwe, yagiye Robben Island for solitary confinement. Nibyo mpamvu nyine nababwiraga ko ntago gereza yari yakubatswe kuko nta baprisonnier bandi bari bahari. So Robert Sobukwe abazungu bamuciriye ku kirwa cya Robben Island, so bamushyira muri icyo bita solitary confinement. At the end of his 60th year at Robben Island, he was released and placed under house arrest until his death in 1978. So afunguwe yafungiwe mu rugo bamurekuye, noneho kugeza igihe yitaba Imana mu 1978. So bivuga yuko rero Robert Sobukwe yafungiwe muri Robben Island nubwo atahamaze igihe kirekire cyane. Urumva Mandela we yafunguwe muri 1990, Robert Sobukwe afungurwa mbere gatoya 90 muri mwaka 78 nibwo yitabye Imana. Icyo gihe cyose yari akimaze iwe niho yari afungiwe. Abazungu bahisemo kumufungira, ariko niwe mufungwa wa mbere wa politike wafungiwe Robben Island. Ni umuntu rero wize cyane, yize muri universite hariya Mandela yize, arangije arakomeza. Reka nze turebe gatoya. In 1947 Sobukwe enrolled at the South African Native College in Fort Hare to the premier undergraduate institution for black students of his time. Although Sobukwe was initially not interested in politics, he studied at the Native Administration relating to the administration of South Africa's Bantustan. Combined with his exposure to politics at the Fort Hare made Sobukwe keener to topic. Keener. Okay. He joined the African National Congress Youth League in 1948. Okay. Urumva yagiye muri muvoma ya Nuza Youth League yindi nyine Mandela yafashije gushinga muri 1988 bwo Robert Sobukwe yinjiye mu rubyiruko rwa ANC muri 1988. Urumva yari na mutoya kuri Mandela. The organization has been established on the university campus by Godfrey PJ, who later became its president. In 1949, Sobukwe was elected as the first president of Fort Hare Student Representative Council, where he proved himself to be a distinguished orator. Hanyuma rero yakomeje akora ibikorwa byinshi. Noneho icyo dushaka kuvuganaho cyane ni uburyo bamufata anafungwa. Initial imprisonment 1960-1963, hanyuma yongera gufungirwa Robben Island following Sobukwe's arrest after the Sharpeville massacre. He was charged with and convicted of incitement and sentenced to 3 years in prison. He served 1 year of his sentence in Witbank prison 1960-1961, followed by the 2 year in Pretoria Gaol 1961 and 1963. Nyuma noneho byagenze bite? Robben Island 1963 1969. So yafunzwe imyaka 6, yongeraho 3, yafunzwe 9. Katurebe. As the end of Sobukwe's 3 years sentence approached, the National Party Parliament passed the General Law Amendment Act, which introduced a clause allowing for political dissidents to be indefinitely detained mu gihe yari arimo yitegura kurangiza igihano cye. Iyo abazungu Apartheid, guverinoma y'abazungu Apartheid, twibutse ko yashinzwe mu mwaka wa 1944, batoreye itegeko ryo rishyiraho mbese ryemeza yuko abantu bose barwanya ubutegetsi bwabo bagomba gufungwa burundu, indefinitely detained. This allowed Sobukwe's sentence to be renewed for an additional 6 years. So byavuzwe yuko itegeko aho rimare kugiraho byabahaye ububasha bwo kongerera ibihano Robert Sobukwe, bamwongerera imyaka 6, which he spent on Robben Island. The clause became known as the Sobukwe clause, as no other individual was sentenced under this provision. So iri tegeko azungu byari bishekeje cyane, binababaje, kubera ko ibaza iri tegeko ryakorewe umuntu Robert Sobukwe, bamwongera ibihano bashingiye kuri iri tegeko, ni naryo ryakoreshejwe kuri we wenyine. Nta wundi muntu iri tegeko ryigeze rikoreshwa ngo afungwe uretse Sobukwe. So iri tegeko ryakorewe Robert Sobukwe, gusa ni nayo mpamvu baryita Sobukwe clause. At Robben Island, Sobukwe was in company of other revolutionaries in liberation struggle such as Nelson Mandela, Mlambo and John Nyati Pokera among many others. Urumva nyine we yagiyeyo hanyuma Mandela nawe bahurirayo n'iki byose ariko Robert Sobukwe inzu ye niho ngaha ndi barimo barikarakaza nyine inzu ye yabaga mu nzu ye wenyine hariya. Sobukwe was kept in solitary confinement but enjoyed a unique prisoner plus status. He was permitted certain privileges including books, magazines, newspapers, civilian clothing, etc. He lived in a separate area on the island and was strictly prohibited from contact with other prisoners. Though Sobukwe was able to communicate sporadically through visual signals while outside for exercise, he studied during this time and received, among others, a degree in economics from the University of London. It is speculated that Sobukwe was subjected to this special treatment because the South African government had profiled him as a greater troublemaker than the regular ANC prisoners. Sobukwe's son disputed, terming this treatment as special. So umwana we yarwanyije abavuga yuko papa we yari afite preferential treatment. Throughout his imprisonment, Sobukwe maintained communication with his friend Benjamin Pogrund, who later became his biographer. Hanyuma rero tugana ku musozo, house arrest 1969-1978, urumva yafunzwe kuva bamukuye muri prison 69 maze ya myaka 6 itegeko ryatowe rimwongerera ibihano ryamwongera imyaka 6 nkuko tubibona hariya, noneho arekuwe, noneho bamushyira muri house arrest. As authorities recognized Sobukwe's deteriorating physical and mental health, he was released from Robben Island in 1969. So abategetsi ba Apartheid bamaze kubona ko ubuzima bwa Robert Sobukwe bugenda burushaho kumera nabi, mental health, physical and mental health, biyemeje kumurekura, noneho bamufungira iwe mu Sobukwe was allowed to live in Kimberley with his family but remained under house arrest. Kimberley was suggested as an area where he could not easily foster subversive activities and also a place where he could live and work while being easily monitored by the state. He was also restricted through banning order which disallowed political activities. So urumva bamukiriye ahantu Kimberley kuko bavuga ko Kimberley kubera ko ari umujyi Kimberley ni umujyi w'abantu b'abakozi, hari za mines n'ibiki, hari abantu bakora bari aba miners n'ibiki bacukura amabuye. So bivuga yuko nta muntu ufite umwanya wo kuba yajya mu bintu bya politike, bityo bamucira muri uwo mujyi kuko bari bazi ko adashobora kujya mu bikorwa bya bihungabanya umutekano, bamushyira aho ngaho bakavuga bati agenda ashaka akazi akora ariko akaba afite leta irimo kumumonitoringa bamugendaho buri munsi, noneho banamubuza no gukora activities zose za politiki. Various restriction banned Sobukwe from traveling overseas. Yari afite rero za restriction nyinshi zamubuzaga no kujya kuba yasohoka ngo agende za Burayi, thus curtailing his attempt to further his education. Byanamubujije no kubasha gukomeza amasomo ye nyine, urumva, curtailing his attempt to further his education. For this same reason, he had to turn down several positions as a teacher at various locations in United States. So kubera situation yari arimo bari bamuje gusohoka, hari imirimo myinshi bashakaga ko ajya gukora ngo ajye kuba umwarimu yigisha muri za university muri Amerika, noneho birangira byose abahakaniye kubera ko atashoboraga gusohoka. Sobukwe completed his law degree with the help of a local lawyer in Gareshewe, and he then started his own practice in 1975 in Kimberley. Yari muri Kimberley nyine kuko bari baramufungiye muri house arrest, ariko yabashije kurangiza degree y'amategeko, noneho afungura cabinet, legal cabinet, afungura cabinet muri Kimberley mu mwaka wa 1975, ariko nyuma y'imyaka 3 yaje kwitaba Imana. Illness and death in early 1977, Sobukwe fell ill and applied for permission to receive medical treatment. His request was denied indefinitely until intervention of his friend Benjamin Pohland. Subsequently, in September 1977, Sobukwe traveled to Johannesburg, where he was diagnosed with lung cancer and then transferred to a hospital in Cape Town. Although the South African government granted Sobukwe access to treatment, they imposed strict conditions on his travel. Sobukwe was required to report to a police station every time he left Kimberley or arrived at the hospital. He died from complication of lung cancer on 27 February 1978, and he was buried in Graaff-Reinet on 11 March 1978. So nkuko twavugaga rero na amateka maremare uyu mugabo Robert Sobukwe yahuye n'ibibazo byinshi. Urumva yarafunzwe, ageze aho arafungurwa, bamufungira mu rugo, bamubuza kwinyagambura, ibintu byose babaga bamuriho barimo kumugendaho. Anarwaye mu gihe yararembye, bamushyiraho ingenza, akagomba kujya kwiripotinga buri gihe. Noneho murabibona ko nkuko inkuru itubwira, kubera za complication nyine z'iyo kanseri yararwaye yo mu bihaha, yitabye Imana ku itariki ya 27 z'ukwa 2018. Hanyuma ashingurwa mu mujyi, urumva yabaga Kimberley, noneho amaze kwitaba Imana yitaba Imana Cape Town, noneho ashingurwa mu mujyi witwa Graaff-Reinet ku itariki 11 z'ukwa 3 mu 1978. Birababaje cyane, ni sad story, ariko ni amateka yacu nk'Abanyafurika. Aba ni abagabo b'indashyikirwa bakoze ibintu bikomeye, barahagurutse barwanya akarengane, barwanya ibyo ubutegetsi bw'abazungu Apartheid bakoreraga abirabura. Tuzahora tubibuka nk'intwari za Afurika ba Mandela. Robert Sobukwe nawe nuko hari n'abandi nyine nkuko twababonye bagiye bafatanya muri struggle. Hanyuma nkuko nyine navuze, Ahmed Kathrada nawe hari icyo twamuvugaho gikeya. Ahmed Kathrada hari icyo twamuvugaho gitoya nawe, kuko nawe ari mu bantu baharaniye kwibohora kw'abirabura. Reka nze mbaganizaho gatoya ku mateka ya Ahmed Kathrada, kuko ngewe ubwanjye nanjye naramubonye Ahmed Kathrada, nagize umugisha wo kumubona Ahmed Kathrada. Amateka ya Ahmed Kathrada ni umugabo wakoze nawe wifatanyije n'abandi mu kurwanya Apartheid cyane. Amateka rero, Ahmed Mohamed Kathrada yavutse ku itariki ya 21 z'ukwa 8 1929, hanyuma yitaba Imana ku itariki 28 z'ukwa 3 1917. Sometime known by the nickname Kati, was a South African politician and anti-apartheid activist. So Kathrada nawe ari mu mateka ya Afrika, amateka ya South Africa, kuko ari mu bantu kwikubitiro bahagurutse nabo barwanya Apartheid. Kathrada's involvement in the anti-apartheid activities of the African National Congress, ANC, led him to his long-term imprisonment following the Rivonia trial, in which he was held at Robben Island and Portsmouth prison. urumva yafungiwe muri prison 3 Mandela afungiwemo, ebyiri bazibanyemo. Bigaragara yuko muri iriya yonyine ya Rivonia iriya Mandela yafungiwemo, Muhammad Kathrada nawe kuko yari muri ANC muri ANC nawe yafunzwe, yaraburanishijwe noneho akatirwa gufungwa. Following his release in 1990, he was elected to serve as a member of parliament representing the ANC. He authored a book, No Bread for Mandela, Memoirs of Ahmed Kathrada, prisoner number 468/64. Early life, Ahmed Kathrada. Ahmed Kathrada was born on the 21st August 1929 in a small country town of Xhosa in the Western Transvaal, the fourth of 6 children in a Gujarati Bohra family of a South African and Indian immigrant parent from Surat, Gujarat. Once in Johannesburg, he was influenced by leaders of the Transvaal Indian Congress such as Dr. Yusuf Dadoo, I.C. Maya Molvi, and Yusuf Kacharia, and J.N. Singh. Consequently, he became a political activist at the early age of 12 when he joined the Youth Communist League of South Africa. He took part in various activities such as handing of leaflets and performing volunteer work in individual passive resistance against the Bagenzi Act in 1941. So Kathrada yatangiye activism akiri muto ku myaka 12. During World War II, he was involved in the anti-war campaign of the non-European United Front. At the age of 17, he left school to work full-time for the Transvaal Passive Resistance Council in order to work against the Asiatic Land Tenure and Indian Representation Act, commonly referred to as the Ghetto Act, which sought to give Indian limited political representation and restricted where Indian could live, trade, and own land. So yarahagurutse nawe ajya kurwanya iryo tegeko ryakumiraga abantu bakomoka bafite inkomoko mu Buhinde, ryababuzaga guhitamo gutura aho bashaka cyangwa gucuruza no gukora indi mirimo cyangwa se no gutunga no kugira ubutaka. Kathrada was one of the 2,000 volunteers imprisoned as a result of campaign. He spent a month in Durban jail in South Africa. This was his first jail sentence for civil disobedience. Later, he was elected as the chair of the Transvaal Indian Youth Congress. While Kathrada was a student at the University of Wits, he was sent as delegate of the Transvaal Indian Youth Congress to the Third World Festival of Youth and Student in East Berlin, 1951. He was elected as the leader of the large multiracial South African delegation. He remained in Europe in order to attend a congress of the International Union of Students in Warsaw, and finally traveled to Budapest and worked as at the headquarters of the World Federation of Democratic Youth for 9 months. So yagiye Burayi muri Budapest, ajya muri Congrès International Union of Students, hanyuma ajya Warsaw muri Poland, ajya mu nama, hanyuma ahavuye nyine aragenda abonayo n'akazi, ajya Budapest, niho yagiye gukora Budapest muri Hungary, aragenda gukorayo. As a result of the growing cooperation between the African and in the Indian Congress in the 1950s, Kathrada came into close contact with African National Congress leaders such as Nelson Mandela and Walter Sisulu. He was one of 156 accused in the 4-year treason trial which lasted for 1956 to 1960. Eventually, all of the accused were found not guilty. Hanyuma rero dukomeje, imprisonment for the following 18 years. Kathrada was confined to Robben Island maximum security prison of Cape Town along with most of his Livonian trial co-defendant. In October 1982, he was moved to Posmo maximum security prison near Cape Town. While in jail on Robben Island and in Posmo, Kathrada completed a bachelor degrees in history, criminology, and as well as 3 other degrees thanks to his family who paid the tuition fee. On the 15th October 1989, Kathrada along with Jeff Masemola, Raymond Mlaba, Bill Neil, Welton Mkwai, Andrew Mlangeni, Elias Motsoaledi, Oscar Mpeta, and Walter Sisulu were released from Johannesburg prison. Kathrada yarekuwe muri 1989 umwaka umwe mbere ya Mandela. Ubwo rero icyo nagira ngo nyine ubwo n'amakuru n'amateka twanyuragamo gake kugira ngo aba bagabo batatu ariyo Nelson Mandela, akaba Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe na Ahmed Muhammad Kathrada, tuvuga amateka yabo ukuntu byagenze kugera ubwo babashije kugera ku byo barwaniraga ari byo guhirika ubutegetsi bw'abazungu ba Apartheid bagashaka buhake bari bamereye nabi abirabura. Activities after the unbanning of ANC in February 1990, Kathrada served as the interim leadership committees of both the ANC and the South African Communist Party. He resigned from the latter position when he was elected to ANC National Executive Committee in July 1991. During the same year, he was appointed as a head of ANC Public Relations as well as fellow of the University of the Western Cape Maibuye Center. Kathrada went on the Hajj pilgrimage to Makkah 1992. Mbashimira rero twanzura ikiganiro cyacu, mbashimira uburyo mwakomeje kubana natwe. Ni by'agaciro kuba tugira umwanya wo kuganira ku mateka y'ibyaranze inkundura yo kurwanya apartheid muri Afurika no kwibohora kw'abirabura kuri iyo ngoyi y'abazungu bagashaka buhake. Ndabashimiye rero, mukomeze mugire ibihe byiza, muduhe comment, like and share, kandi mukomeze mwitabira ibiganiro byacu nakagaruka. Ndabashimiye.